You're listening to the official Minnesota Wild podcast, presented by Acrisure.
Hello and welcome to KFAN Wild Weekly. Brandon Micheletti on vacation. Kevin Fallness with you for the next half hour. Coming up later on, we're going to talk to John Walton, play-by-play voice of the Washington Capitals. Wild taking on the Caps Thursday night, so we'll get you a preview of that and talk about the great chase involving Alex Ovechkin. But right now, let's go to Fargo, North Dakota. That's where my good friend Pat Micheletti is hanging out, my co-host on Beyond the Pond every Saturday morning from 10 to noon, but he's got business to take care of. The Gophers are in the NCAA Tournament. We'll talk about that and more with my good friend Pat Micheletti. How we doing, Patrick?
I'm doing well, Kevin, and please give my best to John Walton, who had some health issues and I believe is back now calling games and great person, and give him my best. Up in Fargo, Kevin, getting ready for tomorrow night's do or die game. So it's going to be fun.
Let's start there. The NCAA tournament, the Gophers advance, of course, and they will take on UMass. There was some thought when we talked to Schloss over the course of the weekend that it could be a Minnesota matchup in the first round going up against Minnesota State. Instead, they draw UMass. How do the Gophers match up against UMass?
Well, UMass was a team that started the year pretty poor. In fact, I saw them. They played in the Icebreaker tournament to start the season off, where the Gophers were in Las Vegas, and they lost their first game and then beat Air Force in the third place game. But they're a team that has been on fire as of late. I think they've won 13 games in the second half of the year, which is pretty good. One of the hotter teams in college hockey. But, at this stage of the season, Kevin, everybody knows what's on the line. They haven't played in 13 days. Minnesota hasn't played in 21 days. I'm anxious to see, what these teams bring from the get-go.
Patrick and Wally on the call. Wally Shaver, of course, Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.5. Thursday night from Fargo, round one of the NCAA tournament. I assume pregame starts at 7 o'clock on your radio dial, and they'll have you covered start to finish. That UMass team lost to BU in the Hockey East tournament. Gophers come in. Of course, they lost in the Big Ten tournament to Notre Dame. How are you feeling about the Gophers at this stage? Like you said, it's been a layoff for both teams, so both teams are going to come in with the potential of rust. But we know this Gophers team, when they play well, they're loaded for bear.
Yeah, when they're on their game, I don't know if there's many teams in the country that can beat them. But on the flip side of that, when they have an off night, it's noticeable. So, I'm like I said, I'm anxious to see how they come out. In talking to them yesterday and to their staff yesterday, they're ready to go. And yes, talk is cheap, but they're it's been 3 weeks, and so they want to get out on the ice and play against somebody in a different uniform. So I think they'll be ready to go. It's again, this is it, Kevin. You win, you keep playing, you lose, you're done. And I think they understand that and know that. And sometimes teams, when the gun is to the head, you up your intensity a little bit, and that's what we're hoping for tomorrow night.
I won't put a gun to your head. I did hear Bob Motzko talking with PA, I think it was yesterday, and the conversation came up about the goaltender. He says he knows which ways he's going, but he's not telling the media at this point. A gun to your head, which I won't do, but figuratively, if you had to guess, Soulier or Airy, who do you think gets the starting goal?
You know what? I've been trying and unsuccessfully to get that information. I'm going to be 50-50 on this, right? So I've my odds are even, but I'm thinking that they'll probably go with the older guy, in Liam Soulier. I could be 100% wrong. I just don't know yet. And sometimes, and as you know, Kevin, you just kind of let things happen and not push too much for information. And that's kind of the tact I'm taking right now.
Probably a good plan. Again, it's the Gophers and UMass, 7 o'clock pregame. Puck drops at 7:30 tomorrow night from Fargo. Wally Shaver and Pat Micheletti on the call. Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.5. Want to get your thoughts on the Wild here, but real quick, Minnesota State ends up drawing Western Michigan. We know what a beast they can be. We saw them this weekend in the NCHC Frozen Faceoff. They take down a very good DU team. But Minnesota State's playing pretty well, too. What do you make of that matchup?
Might be the hottest team in college hockey, and they give up 1.46 goals per game. So they're a very difficult team to score on. And it's going to be a fascinating game because Western Michigan likes to get after it. They like to score a lot of goals, and Minnesota State doesn't like to give up many goals. So you have two different styles. Will Western Michigan become frustrated with the way that Minnesota State plays? When you're a team that likes to score goals and you're getting checked, it's not fun. And does Minnesota State have enough offense, to get that extra goal to win? I think it's going to be a great game. I give Minnesota State as much of a chance as anybody, to win tomorrow night. And so I think it's going to be a great game. And before I forget this little nugget, Kevin, I have to tell you, the last time the Gophers went to the Frozen Four, which was 2 years ago, do you know who they played in the first game and then in the second game?
No, remind me. These two teams?
They beat UMass in overtime in the first game, and then in the final of the regional, they beat Western Michigan.
Here we go. Yeah,
so we could potentially see that scenario again. Just saying, that's what happened the last time they went to the Frozen Four.
It could happen. I'd love to see an all-Minnesota final in this regional.
And same here.
Hard to not root for Luke Strand. And, of course, we know our allegiances to Bob Motzko and the Golden Gophers. So that's what's coming up. Great day of hockey tomorrow. NCAA tournament, of course, on the college level. It is KFAN Wild Weekly, so I got to talk a little bit about the Minnesota Wild, although it's not a great topic. As high as we were going into Saturday night when the Wild had won 3 in a row and they're coming off a great week of hockey, now, all of a sudden, you lose in Dallas, you lose 5-1 to the Vegas Golden Knights, and the measuring stick didn't quite work well against the top teams from the Western Conference. What do you take from that 48 hours of a pair of losses?
Well, I take from the pair of losses that that's not their team. That is not the Minnesota Wild team per se. Yes, I looked at the lineup, especially for last night's game against Vegas. And I'm looking at the line chart, and I'm seeing, guy who's been in the minors, Brodin out. And so it's really, you can't really look at the Minnesota Wild team and say that's the Minnesota Wild team, because it's not the Minnesota Wild team that played in October and November when they were healthy. And what happened when they were healthy? They were one of the best teams in the National Hockey League. So I know people get frustrated. I know the negative stuff comes into play again, but you got to put that aside. This is what they have right now. And hopefully, and I still believe they're going to make the playoffs. And if they can just hang on and get some bodies back, and then potentially we can see the real Minnesota Wild team. That's how I look at it, Kevin. I'm not one of those, they're terrible, they're this, they're that, because we know when they have their full complement of players, they're going to be as tough as out as anybody. So that's where I'm at with them. Hopefully they'll get guys back. If not, then yes, it's going to be difficult. We're not, you can't sugarcoat that because you just don't replace Kaprizov, Brodin, Foligno, guys like that, seasoned pros who are really, really good players. Tough to replace that. And so I just caution everybody, just hang in there, slug through it. Hopefully we get the guys back, and then we'll see what they can do in the playoffs.
Well, and to that point, there was good news yesterday prior to the Wild taking on the Vegas Golden Knights. John Hines unveiled the fact that by the end of the week, if not sooner, both Kaprizov and Joel Eriksson will be back on the ice. I've been around this team forever, but since December, I have not seen either of those two guys at all. And to hear that they're going to be on the ice by the end of the week, that's good news. The bad news is there's just 10 games left in the regular season. Is that enough runway? First they got to get back on the ice, then they got to join practice, then they get back into game action. There's still a progression here, but is there enough time left to get them up to form to hit the ground running once the playoffs resume, assuming that the Wild make it, considering how things are going?
I'll put it to you this way. If it was a middle of the road player, it's going to take them time. When you're talking the level that these guys play at, when they're healthy, elite players just have a way, okay? And so, there's probably going to be a little rust, but they'll be able to get up to speed faster than I think other guys would. That's my take on it. So, I just want him healthy and back in the lineup for that first playoff game.
Well, hopefully the Wild can take care of business over the course of the final 10 games of the regular season, get those bodies back on the ice. You got to take care of business tomorrow night in Fargo. The Golden Gophers taking on UMass. You got to represent the Big Ten and the Midwest. They're a fancy team from out east. So, Patrick, fire up the troops. Let's get them going tomorrow.
I'm going to do my best, Kevin. Let's leave it at that. I'll do my best. All right.
Outstanding. That's the voice of Pat Micheletti. Again, catch him on the air tomorrow night starting at 7 o'clock with the pregame. Twin Cities News Talk, AM 1130 and 103.5. Wally Shaver, Pat Micheletti, all the play-by-play action as the Gophers take on UMass. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Wild facing off against the Washington Capitals tomorrow night from St. Paul. Pregame at 6:15. We're going to preview that next with the play-by-play voice of the Washington Capitals, John Walton, right here on KFAN Wild Weekly. Welcome back to KFAN Wild Weekly. We continue right here on FM 100.3 The Fan, ready to take on the Wild and Capitals Thursday night in St. Paul. And to help preview the action, we bring in the play-by-play voice of the Washington Capitals. He's one of us. It's John Walton. John, how you doing today, buddy?
Very good to be back, Kevin. Yeah, always good to be back in the city. So very excited for this one. And our last game, it's out of the Eastern time zone. So I feel like the playoffs are just around the corner here.
And they really are. They are right around the corner. Love your story, and we'll preview the Wild and the Caps and everything else going on in your world. But we got to talk about the Great Eight, chasing history here. I know it's an active topic of conversation probably everywhere you go. And it won't be any different right now. The guy just continues to be a machine, John. It has to be a heck of a ride watching history unfold right before your eyes.
It really is. And, I mean, when you talk about, the ups and downs of it, too, because, we're at the end of the season. And, I mean, the way it started at the beginning of the year where they were just falling in for him. And in the third period on November 18th in Utah, he had just scored 2 goals. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And the when could be early March or maybe mid-March or probably almost certainly by now. And he broke his leg. So it's okay, well, it's not going to happen this year. That's really unfortunate. And then he comes back and he keeps popping them in. So it's been doing a lot of math. And I got into this because I don't do a lot of math. So, but in trying to figure out what is 0.7 goals, 0.6 goals per game, where does that get you? And it has all of the earmarks of being in the last 2-3 games of this season for sure. It doesn't mean he'll get it, but it's tough to imagine that it would happen before that. Having said that, the goal in Winnipeg was big for him to get down to 6 to go, but good for the team because they were able to get a point in a game where I thought they played pretty well. But it was nice to be able to see some vintage Ovechkin from the office, let it fly, beat Connor Hellebuck, who's probably going to be the Vezina. So, yeah, it was great in Winnipeg. He always loves playing at XL for whatever reason. His numbers against the Wild are some of the best that he has against any team. Per capita, I think only the Blues are better, which is weird. They're 2 Western Conference teams, but by the game and per capita, he's as good against those teams as anybody. So maybe another little bit of history in St. Paul.
It's funny because I was thinking back last night to the first matchup earlier this year. I think it was in January, and it came down to Ovechkin and Fleury. And yes, Ovechkin scored in that game, but Fleury shut him down in the shootout. It was just such a vintage move for two future Hall of Famers. What did you take away from that first contest in D.C.?
Well, pretty much that. I mean, there's been a lot of history in this season, obviously, with Alex and what Sidney Crosby has done in Pittsburgh and passing Gretzky for most points with one team. And, it's not, this era is coming to an end, and seeing what Marc-Andre Fleury has done and to be able to have the tour and the reception he's had around the league, that's great. Well, here's a little bit more as we get toward the end of the season. I mentioned before about this may be the last three games, maybe is what we're looking at. So the Capitals are at home in Game 80. In Game 81, they're going to be on Long Island. And in Game 82, the last game of the year, they're in Pittsburgh. So if it comes down to it, and I'm not saying, I mean, I've always kind of felt from the beginning if he scored enough, there's a home and home with Columbus, and, in those last 5 games, maybe that would be it. But if he needs every bit of runway between now and the end of the season, I mean, you have a scenario where we could be in Pittsburgh and he's sitting on 894. And I can't decide if the world would implode if that happened, that he would do it in Pittsburgh, or if it's the perfect bookend for what happened when the Wild were in DC before, where, just these great vintage moments. Why would you not want Sidney Crosby there for that? Why would you not want Nick Backstrom, who's going to be traveling with us at the end, along with Wayne and with Gary Bettman? So it's going to be a spectacle whenever it happens. I really hope it happens in April. I hope it doesn't wait till October. It is inevitable that it will. Whenever it happens, we'll take it, and it's going to be a lot of fun to witness history.
Is the circus there now? Because I know that there is talk about Gretzky and Bettman following you guys around. They want to be there when it happens. I mean, there's still is it within the possibility? It doesn't seem probable that it would happen within the next couple of games because he's 6 games out or 6 goals out. At what point does the circus really ramp up and these guys start tagging along?
I think the number is 4. So if he were to get, say, 2 goals at XL, I think when we go home for Buffalo, that I think we would start to see that. I think certainly, I don't know if the number's 3 or 4. I think it's 4, where they will be in the building and start to join us and travel wherever we travel to. So, yeah, I mean, kind of crazy in and of itself just to be having 99 and the traveling party will be a little bit. Right. That's when you know you're in one. So looking forward to when that happens. And that part could be very, very soon. I don't think there's going to be a game that he misses. Certainly once he gets within 3, the commissioner and Nick Backstrom just told us this week that he's going to be doing it too. So that's exciting just to have Nicky around. Nicky's the one. I mean, having Wayne is great, but having Nicky back around, it would be when that moment comes and seeing him, who was a part of so many of his goals, the most of any player, that he'll be on the ice and part of the celebration, I think is important to a lot of us in the organization.
I didn't predict that the Caps would contend for the Metro Division title, let alone battle for the President's Cup trophy. How are they doing this? No one projected them to be this good this year. Am I wrong? Did you see it coming?
I did. I see a flirtation with the President's Trophy? No. Did I think that this team wasn't getting its just due from their moves that they made in July? Yeah, I always felt that, a team that squeaked in the playoffs and quite frankly, they won 4 of their last 11 games last year, but it was the spot that nobody wanted, and the Capitals found a way in Game 82. But it started to build what I think happened here now, where these guys got 4 games against the Rangers, who had a fantastic season, and the Caps got run fast, out in 4, see you later. Yeah. But it gave Alexei Protas and Connor McMichael and the young guys on this team a little bit of, hey, this is what we need to be if we want to be a better team. So they go out and get 7 new guys. They bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois. They bring in Matt Roy. They bring in Logan Thompson, and really across the board, Brandon Duhaime, of course, that fans know here very well. And all of them have worked out brilliantly. Duhaime is just a tremendous addition with Nick Dowd and now Anthony Beauvillier on the fourth line. We call them fourth line, but they're not because they really play a lot more minutes than that. Kind of more of an identity line for this team. Matt Roy's been just terrific defensively. This team is as good 1-6, I think, on balance as any team in the league. Pierre-Luc Dubois has been arguably this team's MVP. Tom Wilson has 31 goals. Connor McMichael's breakout season, he's got 25. Alexei Protas has 29. They don't have that. It's funny to say this because Ovechkin still works here, but they don't have that star power, just game-changing, electrifying Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Kirill Kaprizov type guy. But they are 1-12. There's no holes. And they've gotten great goaltending from Thompson and Lakeville's very own Charlie Lindgren. So between all of that, they got going in October, and they have been just tremendous ever since. To be 31 games over 500, no one, I think, in this organization would have said that. But this team was a playoff team. I absolutely believe that. And I thought, okay, second place is probably, I still thought the Rangers were going to be much better. I didn't think they were going to absolutely implode. I didn't think that New Jersey, I thought New Jersey would be better, but they have not been very good in the second half. And the Caps have just run away with it. And now they're just counting down the days, really, to winning a Metropolitan Division title, certainly clinching home ice through 3 rounds. They have a healthy lead even over the defending champs and Tampa Bay and Toronto. And very likely, they've got the slightest of leads over Winnipeg for first overall. I don't know that that's so important, but this team has, in some senses, overachieved, and in some ways they just didn't get their due, I think, in cities that weren't Washington. I think they were always going to be a better team. But I would be lying if I said I thought they would be where they are right now.
Awesome stuff, John. You're one of my favorites. Good luck tomorrow night. Have fun here in St. Paul, and we'll see you at the rink.
All right. Look forward to seeing you, Kevin. Always good to be home. Thank you.
The play-by-play voice of the Washington Capitals is John Walton. Thanks to him for joining us here on KFAN Wild Weekly. Until next time, for Brandon Micheletti, I'm Kevin Fallness. Thanks for listening to another edition of KFAN Wild Weekly.
For an extraordinary advantage in sports, you need a game plan. For an extraordinary advantage everywhere else, all you need is Acrisure. With a high-tech human approach to insurance, cybersecurity, and more, Acrisure helps you take care of what you care about. That makes winning easy. See what Acrisure's extraordinary advantage can do for you at Acrisure.com.